Did you know that I also stream games on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, usually around 6 or 7 US Central Time, and on Mondays whenever I feel like it because I'm inconsistent. I hope to see you there. This is going to be The Simple Secret of Runway Numbers by CGP Grey. CGP Grey does some interesting animations. I watched a couple in the past, and notably on flag design, and they don't seem to post that often, but I do love their videos, so check this one out. This one was posted 2 weeks ago.
While waiting on a plane during taxi till takeoff, looking out the window, you may have noticed the giant number numbering the runway, say 8, which implies 7 others exist, at least, but this is a flight out of LOL Airport in Nevada's Desert of Nothing. There's only 2 runways, which, given the passenger load, seems like maybe 1 too many already. What's the deal with runway numbers, you might wonder aloud? Oh,
yeah,
hello
interesting.
Again. Flying to Nook as well, are you? It is a long
Nook
flight, so there's tons of time for me to tell you all about runways. Let's begin. So, before you can number a runway at an airport,
the entire plane is empty except for the 2 of them, and they get seated together. Sounds about right.
Tell you all about runways. Let's begin. So, before you can number a runway at an airport.
Okay, so my guess is the runway number has nothing to do, like, obviously it has nothing to do with the actual number of runways, so I'm assuming it either has to do with the angle of the runway or maybe something to do with, like, latitude and longitude. That's my guess.
You need to build the airport, and before you can build the airport, you need to plan the port. And what needs figuring first is which way to run the way. Pilots want runways with winds in parallel for physics reasons that we are going to skip, both because lift physics is something people really like to argue about, and this isn't a physics video. Yeah, I'm recording a...
Okay, fair enough. Not a physics video. But that does make sense. Okay, so that doesn't explain about the runway numbers, but it does explain about the runways themselves. So runways want to be pointed so they either go toward or against the wind, in parallel with the wind. Okay, that makes sense. I would assume you would always, well, I was going to say, I'd assume you'd always want them pointed away from the wind, so that way the wind blows on your back, you have a tailwind to get a faster flight. But I guess maybe you would want the wind blowing toward you when you're trying to land, so I guess, which could be solved by the same exact runway either way. It's just which direction you approach it from. Okay, whatever.
A runway video right now? Hope you don't mind. But the summary is planes take off and land into the wind because it lets them use less runway and makes for safer and stabler landings in particular. Now, planes can land with winds unaligned, but it's unsettling to watch these crosswind attempts as pilots do their best to face into the wind while landing on a runway that does not. Oof.
Yeah,
so
that's...
airports too want winds running with the runway, but the universe is indifferent to human desires. Wind winds as it wants, so the simple solution in aviation early days was to build a triangle of runways, put up a little windsock, and direct the pilot to the runway that paralleled the sock and thus the wind. But as aviation grew, so did airplanes, and thus their runways, making the triangle trick impractical for big urban internationals. But the simple sock still solved it. See, if you record when and which way the windsock blows and with what wind force, you've grown yourself a windrose, a clever little data viz tool with the sock in the center of compass points for orientation and bars colored in size for strength and frequency of wind. Though it reads opposite actually of everyone's expectation.
Because of course it does. Because everything's always more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm assuming because the wind... Oh, let's see. Okay, you can see my cursor. So I'm assuming because the windsock is pointing this way, that means they make a mark on this side. You know, opposite the direction the windsock is actually facing. So they're always checking... So they're always marking it for the direction the wind is coming from, not where it's going.
With the lines showing the way the wind blows from and not
that's what
to.
I was just saying.
Physics stuff just loves to opposite, actually. Let's just agree to avoid physics for this video, shall we? Wind roses reverse readings aside, they reveal that
same thing there, yeah. Because everybody would think that electrical charges flow from the positive, but no, they flow from the negative, which is completely the opposite of what everybody thinks. Like, I wonder why we even decided electrons were negative anyway, because there's no real meaning to the positive and negative other than we want them to note that they are opposites. So, I wonder why we decided that one was positive, one was negative. Like, how we decided which one was the positive, which one was the negative. Anyway.
Let's just agree to avoid physics for this video, shall we? Wind roses reverse readings aside, they reveal that in most places, most of the time, most of the wind mostly blows back and forth in one direction. So that's surprisingly convenient.
There's a lot of mostlies.
Oh, you did it for other reasons? Well, still, this convenient wind happens because wind is a current of air, transporting heat from where there's more to where there's less. The Earth is blasted by the nuclear heat of the sun, with the equator getting hit hardest, making hot air rise there as it cools out along the edge of space before coming back down, creating a big-scale convection current that repeats in a pattern all up and down. And because the Earth is a sphere that spins, those cylindric convection currents of air on the surface twist clockwise north of the equator and counter below. This is the Coriolis effect, creating coiled currents of air everywhere, which is cool, but also physics trying to sneak back into the video, and this isn't a physics video. All that matters is this creates the pretty stable pattern of trade winds, and if you're planning a port, you need only know which way does the wind mostly blow. Though at some locations, the wind rose reveals two frequent directions of wind, so if you want to constantly and safely keep open the airport, you're going to need to run a second way. This is why many airports have an X or V layout like LOL. They're not necessarily doing double the traffic of a one-runway port, but rather have double the chance of crosswinds when the tower will need to reroute pilots toward the other alignment.
Okay, that makes sense.
Landings. And once you have two of something, you need names or numbers. Sure, you could just go with run 1 and run 2, but pro tip, try never to use the very first thing that comes to mind without giving it a bit of a ponder first, and the wind rose reveals a better way with the compass points, which form a circle of 360 degrees, starting at 0 north, east 90, south 180, west 270, and back to north makes it 360 as well. These compass degrees come from ships of the seas, because captains and quartermasters, when in the vast, featureless nothing, could still count on their compass to point toward the North Pole, assuming no iron hooks happen nearby, and with north as a fixed navigational point could then communicate their heading with names broadly, east-southeast, or numbers precisely, helm to 108. Quite handy. So it's no surprise these compass headings got passed from sea ships to airships. Thus, on the Wind-Rose devised plans for any airport, the runway is already aligned with navigational numbers.
Okay, I have a guess now where this is going. So I'm assuming they always just they always try to aim for a 10th, a number in the tens, and then they just chop off the 0. So this 60 here would end up making this runway 6. That's my guess. This is just what makes sense to me. Like, to make it a simpler system, instead of having 360 possible numbers, you just go every 10 and chop off the 0. So you have 60, 90, 18, 20, or you have 6, 9, 18, 27, all the way up to runway 35, because when you get back to 36, that would be runway 0. So that's just a much simpler system. And I'm assuming they don't actually always align the runway to the 10, but they always round to the nearest 10. That's going to be my guess, because humans do stupid stuff like that. So that's my guess how this works.
Begging to be used. But before grabbing the obvious one, again, ponder for a moment. The runway points from the perspective of the port toward the plane. The rather more important heading to use is from the plane's perspective approaching the port, which
that makes sense.
At the opposite end, actually, because it's what number matches the compass in the cockpit that's critical. All right, this needs a couple of example airports. Take one with a north-south runway. When the wind blows from the north to the south, the tower directs pilots to approach from the south, meaning they need to point the plane north, which on their compass is a heading of 360 degrees. So let's put a big big 360 on that end for now. When the winds reverse, the tower directs pilots to approach from the north,
which would be
fly south,
180.
which reads 180. So let's put a big 180 on that
So
end
18
as well.
and 36.
Now that we've got our heading numbers, the convention is to round them to 10 and cut off the 0 for the
Called it. Round to 10, cut off the 0. That's exactly what I was saying.
runway number, because we don't need 3 sig figs of precision when airports have single-digit numbers of runways, and the very stressed air traffic controllers in the tower need to repeat precisely these numbers hundreds of times a day, so saving syllables here really matters. Thus, when the tower tells the plane to use runway 36, the pilot knows they need to get south of the airport to land facing north, and while there are like a million indicators in a cockpit, the pilot can always confirm they're doing it right by reading 360 on their ancient ancestors' compass. This low-tech check is useful as a fallback because a compass can see the way even when eyes and other equipment cannot. As a 2-runway example, an airport with a perfect ordinal X would get numbered thusly. Northwest to southeast gives 315 for one end, because that's the way the pilot needs to point, and 135 at the other. Round to 10 for
32 and 40
and 140, then drop the zeros to get runways 32 and 14. On the other side, 225 and 45, round to 10 again, drop the zeros for 23 and 5. Now, when the towers talk to the pilots, they say each digit individually, so runway 23, because clarity here is critical, which is also why the font and exact size of these digits is standardized worldwide. Though there are disagreements between the abundant aviation agencies as to if single-digit runways like 6 should have a leading 0 for clarity, or if that leading 0 should only be in our hearts, which
I think you should always have the leading 0. It just makes sense to me, like, that way it's always 2 digits. It will just always be 2 digits. I think that is the biggest clarity there. Besides, also in the case of 06, if you just have the 6, well, that could also, some people might confuse it and think it's flipped over 9 by accident sometimes. Well, it doesn't go up to 90, so if you have a 0 with a 6 or a 0 with a 9, you know the 0 is always in front.
It shouldn't be. Anyway, that's the surprisingly good system behind numbering these numbers, which is always a delight to discover, unlike some other numbers I could mention. There are a couple...
Yeah, how do Social Security numbers even work? Like, how do they determine who gets what number? Like, it seems random, but you know it's not random. There's got to be a system to it. Same thing with credit card numbers. I do know the leading digit tells you who the holder is. Like, 4 is always Visa, 5 is always MasterCard. And I do know somewhere in there is a location code that basically narrows it down, I think like to county, actually. You know, and also one of the codes in there is for institution that one set of the numbers in there is which institution issued the card. So, you know, whichever bank. I'm curious how it works. I'm never going to look it up because I'll never remember. But yeah, I do know it's not completely random. There is a system to it. And I'm curious what that system is, but not curious enough to look it up.
Full of wrinkles. For think about it. If the wind mostly blows back and forth in most places, then most big, busy, urban, international airports will need multiple runways in parallel. But parallel runway...
Yeah, if you have parallel runways, then you end up with a bunch of runways with the same number, and you can't be directing planes all to the same runway. So how are you going to solve that? I'm curious.
Have the same heading, thus the same number under the system, which would be unclear for pilots to say the least. So all the agencies assembled to agree. If you have 2 parallel runways, they will have the same number, but add an L or an R for left and right. If you need to construct a 3rd runway, add a C for center too. But with 4 or more, 2 runways will get the...
Yeah. Okay, that works up to 3. How are you going to do 5 here?
Correct heading number with L and R, but the others, they're going to get the next closest numbers, but not exactly correct numbers, which is...
Oh, I hate that. Oh, no. So that means I mean, the heading's only going to be off by 10 degrees, which probably isn't awful, but at the same time, no, I hate that because now it doesn't line up with the whole nice system we already had.
Which is practical, I suppose, but also, it's all slightly misaligned.
Yeah.
It's big airports. Like, it doesn't line up. Like, just try not to think about it, okay? Just try not to think about it. Oh, we're landing at Nook already? Wow, flights fly fast when you're flapping about flying. Time to put this knowledge to use. Our compass heading reads 42 degrees, so round to 10 440, cut the 0, and we'll be landing on runway 04. And since there's only one runway at Nook, it'll be perfectly aligned. No doubt about that. Oh, it's
Wait.
5, not 4.
What?
How embarrassing. I guess I need to delete this video now. Hey, why are you painting a new runway number? You do that every few decades? That must mean... Oh, runway numbers depend on where the North Pole is. And so, watch out! There's a geography video inside this video.
Oh... I think I knew this, but I completely forgot about it and didn't even think of it until now. The North Pole technically slightly drifts.
Called Where is the North Pole Really? Okay, to find the North Pole, remember that the Earth is a sphere that spins. Oh, sorry, we already went over that. We draw a line about which this spin occurs and name each end the North and South Pole. Starting with these poles, we clever humans created a square-ish coordinate system for our spherical Earth, the detailed creation of which I'm going to skip because that's a physics story for a never time that took hundreds of years and needed lots of clocks, and to make it official that London rules and Paris drools. But anyway, this grid is what every modern navigational system uses to...
Yeah, except the magnetic pole, like these are the geographic poles. They are on the axis. The magnetic poles are not. The magnetic poles run, I think, more or less in alignment with the like, how would I describe this? The solar plane where all of the planets are roughly located. They're not aligned at all into a singular plane, but they do all generally rotate in kind of the same torus around the sun.
Get around with the GPS global positioning coordinates it gives. But if you were to use your GPS to direct you to the North Pole so that you could experience the planet rotating you in place as the stars circled overhead and you pondered the scale of the indifferent universe and your tiny, tiny existence within it, if you took out your compass to double check that the GPS got the spot right, the compass points you over the horizon toward another North Pole. What gives, compass? Well, what did you expect? A compass is a magnet, and magnets follow magnetic fields. That's like their only thing? It's not a math magnet. Your magnet compass will take you to the gigantic magnetic field spewing forth from inside the Earth. So there are two North Poles, one for math and one for magnets. I mean, I guess if you want to be technical about it, there are three North Poles because the magnetic field the North Pole of a magnet points to is the South Pole of the Earth's magnetic field because opposites attract. But look, we're just going to ignore that because this isn't a physics video and there's been enough oh it's the opposite actually already, and yes, I know you can define more norths, but we're moving on.
Yeah, I saw this. I tried to record another video and I screwed it up, but I did learn there was actually like 4 South Poles, so I'm assuming there was also at least 4 North Poles as well. But yeah, let's just keep going.
There are two norths, math and magnets. The compass points to the magnetic north and the GPS points to the geographic north. They don't have anything to do with each other, but for navigation, humans have used both. One isn't better than the other, though math/geographic north is now often called true north, which feels a bit like humans picking the new one as their favorite one. Oh, and ships of the seas have stopped using the old magnetic north and now navigate with GPS using the true north, even modern pirates, but planes and pilots still love the traditional magnet north. And we can stop thinking about this because they're pretty close anyway. Although, isn't that kind of weird just how close the unrelated poles are on a planetary scale? Earth just so happens to have a giant magnet that sort of, but not quite lines up with the planet's top and bottom. In different universe, are these things secretly related? And still, why would runway numbers change?
That is a good question.
Just because they're pointing at the magnet one, but not the math one? Oh no, there really is an unavoidable physics video inside this geography video, and it's called Magnet magnets. What's your deal? Okay, we really can't cover everything about magnets because it's just so much.
Yeah.
But some bits of some metals, such as iron, generate around them a magnetic field. Why and how were a mystery for a long time until we discovered that if you take a wire and run a current of electrons through it, aka electricity, this current also generates a magnetic field around the wire. But weirder, if you start with a current of electrons and pop them in a magnetic field, the current will curve. And oh look, you've stumbled upon a clue to one of the fundamental secrets of the universe.
Electromagnetism, they're the same thing.
And electricity are two expressions of the same thing, electromagnetism. That's why in science class you can coil up a wire, send a current of electricity through it, and the whole thing becomes a magnet. One you can make stronger and stronger with each additional coil, because curving currents are magnets, which is why when you cut the current, everything drops. Our just iron magnets are doing the same thing, but you need to zoom down and down and down and down to the
atoms, which are arranged in such a way that they give them that effect permanently, which is an expression of, I can't think of the term of it. I think it's emergence, where properties exist in things on larger scales that they don't have on smaller scales. Like a single iron atom does not have a magnetic north or south. It is not a magnet on its own. It's only when you have a bunch of them arranged that you actually end up getting a magnetic field generated just by the atoms.
The atomic level to see. Here, an atom of iron has a cloud of electrons, each electron with a charge, and as they whirl around, they create a tiny current and a tiny magnetic field. Zooming even closer, each electron spins, and this spin acts like the universe's teeniest, tiniest current, creating the teeniest, tiniest electromagnet. Okay, look, whirl around and spin don't mean what you think down here, because in the land of quantum, words mean nothing. There is only math that we're not gonna do. So just go with it. Anyway, in most atoms, all these current-created tiny magnetic fields arrange themselves against themselves, so it all cancels out to nothing. But in a rare few atoms like iron does there happen to be an imbalance that aligns and adds up, and thus each iron atom is a tiny magnet. And if adjacent atoms align, their little magnetic fields add up. And zooming out and out and out, if all the atoms in the iron are aligned, then the iron acts as one big monkey-sized magnet. But deep down inside, it's just electron-sized electromagnets. And scaling up and up and up and up to the whole Earth's magnetic field, it's an electromagnet all over again. See, the Earth is made of parts: the thin, perilous, cool crust on which we live, the inner solid core that is several thousands of degrees hot, a middle mantle mostly solid and relatively cool, and critically, a ring of metal liquefied by the hot core. And just as on the surface do hot spots cause convection currents of air to try to even the energy out, so too does the unbelievably hot inner core cause convection currents of liquid metal that happens to be mostly iron, our magnetic friend.
It's mostly iron and nickel, both of which are ferromagnetic, so their constant churning in the core is churning currents, creating magnets.
As this mixture circles, so do all its electrons, curving currents, which gets us magnetic fields, baby.
So
as individual coils, it's not very strong to start. To get a planet-sized field, you need to somehow stack the coils, which is where the Coriolis effect comes back in. For just as Earth's spin causes convection currents of air into coils, so too does Earth's spin cause convection currents of liquid metal to coil, making the fields stronger, turning the whole of the Earth into a giant electromagnet. Wow! If there's one thing the indifferent universe loves, it's repeating the same patterns across scales and domains. Such austere efficiency. It's beautiful.
The funny thing is a lot of that stuff only takes place on scales larger or smaller than us, but not on our scale. Which is why it took us hundreds and thousands of years to figure a lot of this out, because none of it happens at our scale, only on the grandest and the smallest scales.
Oh, get back to the runways? Oh, unlike a real electromagnet made of stable metal, all
we were talking about runways
liquid
here.
iron inside Earth is not stable. So at any moment, the field can split into multiple magnetic poles, roam randomly, or diminish entirely before, oh my, flipping north to south and south to north, which it does every couple 100,000 years or so. And we have no way of predicting.
Yeah. It happens about every 300,000 years from what I remember, and it's due to happen soon-ish. But, like, probably not in our lifetimes. We will have clear signs of it happening before it actually happens. And we need to harden all of our electronics against solar wind before it does, because when it does do the flip, it is not just going to flip instantly. It's going to flip very slowly by basically going away. Not completely, but like greatly weakening and then reforming.
When. Great. That'll cause some trouble. And there's a clue that it's coming because the strength of Earth's magnetic field has dropped 10% over the last couple 100 years, which is concerning. So,
over the last couple 100 years, so it would probably still take a few more hundreds of years before it actually does the flip.
If you're watching this video after the flip, 1, take everything I said about magnetic north and magnetic south, and now it's the opposite, actually. And 2, if it's been a couple 100,000 years since my last upload, don't worry. That's about normal, so be sure to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video. No, and hit the bell. God, I hate that you have to do that now. Alright, time to wrap this up. First, this giant electromagnet made of liquid metal, Coriolis convecting inside Earth only semi-stably means Earth's magnetic field moves. That finishes with the physics and means the magnet North Pole moves, and quite a lot on human timescales. When we started measuring, it was safely inside of Canada, but it's recently rocketed north. Geography over, so we can finally get back to the start. Since runway numbers are derived from the heading on a compass, when the magnet north moves, the runway numbers need to change to match. And the closer your airport is to a magnet pole, the bigger a difference its movement makes. And thus the more frequently you need to update the number. Which is why it's no surprise that Canada, with more northern runways than anyone, was the first to get pretty tired of frequently repainting all her northern runways, and so changed her system to be based on the unmoving math north instead. But this means when flying over her territories, pilots can't count on their compass to match the runways and the winds. They can use their GPS, assuming the battery is charged, but these runway numbers are inconsistent with runways in the whole rest of the world. Now, Canada thinks her system is better and has created an aviation agency to try to
I can see the point, because it would be more reliable since magnetic north moves so much to just center on true north, but at the same time, the whole point of relying on magnetic north was the fact that you can rely on magnets when nothing else is working. Because even if your plane loses all electronics, you can still just pull out a magnet. Or pull out a compass, which is a magnet.
Convince all her international friends, with airports more equatorial and thus less of this problem, to try and switch with her from the old and busted magnetic north to the new true north. If pirates can do it, why not planes too? Yar! Well, because it's mostly a problem for you. And thus, there's not one system for numbering runways, but 2. Oh, hey you! If it's your second watch through, did you notice this video is a version 2? With sharp eyes, you might have spotted what's changed. During the landing at Nook, V1 had the runway number repainting go up a number when it should have gone down. The opposite, actually. Now, after first upload, this seems like only a glitch, right? Causing some confused comments to come in. But as I thought about it more, it grew to a blunder. A blunder.
Did it really matter though? Like, the whole point was just to segue into the idea that it needed to, that they sometimes change the numbers. like, it could just as likely have gone up if the North Pole moved in a different direction. Like, I don't think it really mattered. Either way, it was, like, it moves up or down depending on which direction it moves. Yes, the most recent move probably would have made it change, but, you know, the most recent change in real life probably would have made it gone down instead of up, but it still, I don't think would have mattered.
That kept bothering me for...
Oh, wait, no. I see where they're going with this, because he calculated that they would be landing on runway 4 and end up landing on 5, and then they repainted it to 6, which would have made no sense. Unless they're repainting it because they're now following the Canadian system. Maybe that's... I don't know.
After all, the first half of the video builds towards these two correctly calculating the runway number in advance of their landing before finding the unexpected and then being proven correct, which they weren't, before the rest of the adventure. This mistake brought me much gloom and eventually graduated this glitch-turned-blunder to an error, kind catastrophicus. So I've sucked it up, sacrificing the V1 view count and algorithmic love of the YouTube gods to probably annoy a lot of people with what looks like a pointless re-upload if you didn't make it to this part post-video, which most won't, but you did, so thank you. And given that you're a video completionist, I've got something extra for all the Bonnie Bees who support the channel.
Oh, really?
A 2-hour stream where I take you behind the scenes on how I thought would be a simple explanation on runway numbers, no more than 3 minutes surely, spiraled into almost 20 explaining almost all of physics. Something, given my background as a physics teacher, I had been really trying to avoid for years, but was obviously inevitable. So, if you've ever wondered how videos like...
aviation is heavily based on physics. There's really no avoiding it. If you're going to talk aviation, you gotta talk physics at some point.
Like this come together, the stream is an unfiltered look at the process, from ideation to articulation to animation to publication, plus revealing all the hidden Easter eggs and references, of which there are a ton in this one. Plus, there's a deleted scene on how everything connects to the Aurora, actually, and so if you've made it all the way here to the end of the video, you can click here to become a Bonnie Bee and get access to all of the extras for this video and others, as again, a thank you for directly supporting what makes these crazy long-term projects even possible. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, there it is. 1 hour and 50-minute stream VOD. Yeah, I will not be watching that. But yeah, that was interesting. So everything kind of worked out kind of how I figured. Except for Canada wanting to be different from everyone else. Surprisingly, not America for once.